Over to the SEC championship game. Texas, a 2.5-point favorite after opening around 1.5, depending on the book, against Georgia. Rematch from their first meeting where Texas fell behind 23-zip, came back to make it a bit of a game as around a 4-point favorite, I believe. Brett, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but Georgia's still winning by double digits. Total of 49.5 here. The market likes Texas in a rematch. Brett, do you?
Well, I do have to address the fact that I took over in the Texas A&M game last time I was on here, and that's pretty hard to get home when A&M does not score an offensive point. So, we're all wrong on here from time to time, but saying
you
that
had Notre Dame, though.
I did have Notre Dame, but to say that Texas A&M's offense was going to be able to score on Texas defense, I don't think I've ever been more wrong. Because that was just not the case. But look, Texas opened as a 1.5-point favorite. It's now at 2.5. I think I saw 3, maybe pop for a second. If it does hit 3, it's not staying there. There's going to be an absolute floodgate of money coming in on Georgia for sure. One thing that I do like to talk about, injuries that matter in this one, left tackle Kelvin Banks, All-American. He did roll his ankle up on week 14. He probably should play. Probably going to be spatted on that ankle pretty good, but that is something that I am watching. And then this is a weird one. Georgia's starting corner, Julian Humphrey, just hit the portal. Just SEC championship game, opportunity to play for national champion. Nah, I'm out of here. Not sure what that's about. I know the Georgia locker room has been a mess, but guys transferring when they're in the SEC championship, I don't know about that. Carson Beck, though, I have talked about his splits on the road versus at home. He's much worse on the road than he is at home. This is more a home game, of course, happening in Atlanta. But despite that dominant win in Austin, Beck was atrocious against this Texas defense. Do you trust a quarterback to play like that twice and win the game twice? I don't. I like my quarterback to at least be mistake-free, and he was very far. I think he had like a $150 pass in that game or something and a few picks. The last matchup, Texas just looked flat-out shell-shocked. Georgia was actually sending pressure. Like, they weren't just heads-up 4 guys in a pass rush. They were blitzing them, getting home, and they're giving them different looks. But, look, Texas only gave up the 1 touchdown in the second half against Georgia's offense. So there was a flash fry there from, like, the end of the first to, like, the halftime, and then that was kind of the end of that right there. Since then, they gave up 24 points to Vandy, which Vandy's been doing this against good defense. Diego Pavia, Thanos pretty much. And Texas was pretty beat up after that Georgia game. I'm tossing out the Florida result. DJ Lagway got hurt. That's not a data point for me. But then they gave up 10 points to Arkansas, 7 offensive points to Kentucky, and 0 offensive points to A&M. I don't care how good those offenses are. That's an impressive amount there, holding them to basically peanuts. I still question if the Texas offense can do anything against the Georgia defense. One of those 2 touchdowns last time came on a short field. It was a 9-yard field that they scored on a shocker here turnover. By the way, Texas has forced 13 turnovers in the last 5 games. I'm just keep an eye on that. They're going to be able to get the football back. I don't have a bet here just because I think it's going to be interesting, but this is something where like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object in terms of these 2 defenses.
David, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, at first glance, it kind of like screams Texas, but I started like diving in a bit more, and I started liking it less and less and less. And listen, I'm an Oklahoma alum, so for me to like Texas in anything is difficult to stomach to begin with. I was definitely on the wrong side in that first game, man. That was a mess. I think Georgia caught them by surprise that first game, to be honest, just by like all out blitzing them. I think both quarterbacks had lost fumbles. I think Ewers had a couple. Like, they got sacked over a half dozen times or something. They were dead, and then they kind of came back there for a minute as well. I remember watching them be like, oh, maybe we're alive, and it's like, nah, we're dead. And then like recent trends, everything kind of points to Texas as well, right? Like, Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech should have beat Georgia. Let's be honest there, or if not should have. That just would have been just a terrible, terrible loss. So everything kind of seems to be trending Texas, and like Texas should win this and win it easily. But you start diving in more and more, and I'm not like the biggest like trends guy in the world, but like Kirby Smart is like 8-4 as an underdog at Georgia and stuff like that. So I think you can't. I don't think you can discount, especially for college kids. You can't really discount this like motivational factor, right? Like, hey, like we're Georgia, like we've been like top of the world for like several years. Like, we've earned our spot here. Georgia's still legitimately a top 6-7 team in my eyes, right? Like, they're not terrible. Like, have they struggled? Yes. Is Carson Beck leaves some to be desired? Like, yes. It just, man, it feels like it's going to be What's the total on this right now that you're showing?
Pulling it up here at
49 and a
Bet360.
half.
49. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the under in it. I like the under in it. I think both defenses are like pretty good. I think that you're going to see them both come out a little more conservative than last time because like there were like a million turnovers. Again, like it's easier to protect against fumbles. Fumbles can be a little more fluke. I mean, Texas knows what they have to do this time, which is actually like get the ball out quicker and do a little bit better job blocking. But Beck had like I think 3 interceptions there as well. So I mean, I think both teams are going to come out a little more passive. They're going to focus on defense and ball control. And so my favorite bet on this actually is under. I was actually worried it was going to go down a bit more. So I love the under in it. Um, like gun to head, which side do I like more? Like Texas, but I don't think I'm gonna bet it. I think I'm just kind of like I'm gonna enjoy it, and it just it feels like a game, and it feels like a lot of the public is just going on Texas just because like they are the flashy team. They're clearly one of the best two teams in football. Yeah, they had the hiccup against Georgia, but that loss did feel really fluky. Man, they did look good against A&M. That was such a weird game though, because like it. If Texas would have failed to cover that, that would have been so ridiculous because Texas absolutely outplayed them and just kept letting them back in and back in. And at no point did you ever think A&M was going to win that. But a lot of that game, you're like, dude, they're going to like backdoor cover this, and this is going to be like a miserable loss. So give me Texas by a smidge, but love the under.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because just a thought exercise for everyone here. What happens if Texas doesn't turn the ball over twice in plus territory, and it's a 31-7 or 31-0 game? What is the spread?
I mean,
Probably
I don't
hits
know.
3.
Yeah,
3.5 maybe even. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like a lot of
and they outplayed A&M to beat them 31-0, 31-7. But they turned the ball over carelessly in plus territory 2 times. It's just interesting because that doesn't change the composition of Texas in this game. So maybe lean the 2.5.
That's kind of my thinking there. But then I also give like Georgia's been here before. They have like the coach has been here before. Like they have a better. I'm not a big Sark guy. I don't like they have the better coaching staff. I think Texas by far has the better talent. But in these type of games, and it's a rematch. I mean, I think it's easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, like Texas is going to make adjustments, yada yada yada. But like Georgia's going to make adjustments there too. I mean, like that, like as much as I like to think that I was still alive in that game, it was because like Georgia was messing around, like having Beck was throwing like 3 interceptions or whatever. Like Georgia could have, and Georgia still won that game. I think by like 2 touch, like 15 or 16 points. Like it wasn't like they let them back in all the way. So I mean, it's very easy to sit here and be like, Texas has learned their lesson, but Georgia's going to make some adjustments there too. But again, I lean the 2.5, but it's going to be a good game. I mean, it's going to be a really fun one. That's going to be a really fun one to watch. I think it's in my opinion probably the best. I think it's going to be the best game of the bunch, right? At least when you combine like what's at stake and the teams playing, and like both these teams. I think they're both like top 4 or 5 in odds to actually win the whole thing as well. So I mean, this is a massive game for them.
Yeah, looking at the odds to win, or I'll pull that up here in a second, but I wanted to get back to something you said about Kirby Smart covering a dominant ATS record. I think 26 and 15 ATS versus ranked opponents in his career. So been there before, done that, to your point. Georgia, or conversely, on the flip side, failing to cover against Georgia Tech, just barely hanging on, 3-9 ATS this season. But you maybe take that with a grain of salt with the market overvaluing them. And again, not a trends guy either, but just in terms of Smart being here before in this moment, I'm not a Steve Sarkisian guy. So I'm with you from the standpoint that maybe you trust Kirby Smart and this Georgia coaching staff over Sark and Texas. What about the quarterback? Brett, you briefly touched on Carson Beck. Quinn Ewers versus Carson Beck. Who do you trust more?
Well, it depends which Carson Beck shows up because you have a Carson Beck that throws for 297, 5-0, and Carson Beck in the second half of Alabama, that ends with almost 500 yards and 3 touchdowns despite throwing those early picks. Or you get the Carson Beck we got against Texas last time. Or you get the Carson Beck that we have against Ole Miss. And, you can kind of compare those defenses and say, well, I kind of wonder what the factor might be. It's also playing away from home. But right now, probably Quinn Ewers. I might regret that because now we're going to have a Carson Beck game where he just absolutely goes nuclear. But I probably trust. Yeah. How about this? I trust the hole that you get of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning together because I can do that. They do interchange them when need be. I mean, their first touchdown scored was Arch. I trust that whole of two players more than I trust Carson Beck in almost any given situation.
On the injury front, too, to keep in mind, Kirby Smart coming out, I think as we're recording this on Thursday, Trevor Etienne, who missed Georgia's last 3 games with the rib injury, should be able to play, it seems like, against Texas here, and he's listed questionable on the injury report as of Wednesday. So worth noting there, too. I mean, running backs to the point spread in general, not worth a lot, but
in college, more. In college, definitely more.
They trust him.
I have to throw that out.
Okay.
Yeah,
David, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, with all the questions at Beck and the turnovers and stuff, I think having the running back is huge, especially like in the red zone and stuff. Like when you have that running back that can like get in the end zone, it's huge. And I know it doesn't affect the point spread a whole lot. But I think there are certain games where it does. And I think you're actually, not to get too off topic here, I think you're actually seeing it in the NFL this year. And like, yeah, a lot has been made about Barkley and, like these teams that gave up these guys are terrible. I'm like, they were going to be terrible anyways, right? Like the Raiders would be garbage. Like the Giants were going to be a mess, all this. But I think if you even look beyond like some of those guys, I think you look at these teams, like field goals are way up and all this stuff in the NFL. Running back is like so much more important these days, at least in the NFL, just getting that ball in the end zone. Like defenses are getting smarter, all that stuff. I mean, I think you can, how many points do you think like Christian, I know that they're not worth a whole lot, but like Christian McCarthy, I think is like, or McCarthy, how do you say his name? For the Niners. He might
McCaffrey,
be
yeah.
McCaffrey, sorry. McCaffrey
must be having dreams about Mike McCarthy.
He's ruined. Yeah, he's like ruined my one of my best ball teams, unthankfully. But he's like, look how important he is for the Niners to actually get the ball in the end zone, right? Like he's like the one guy where they would get in the end zone. Like he's the one you always felt good about scoring. Otherwise, you put on Brock Purdy's shoulders, and like he's got to find one of his receivers, and it's just not made for it. I kind of view George as the same thing, right? Like Beck isn't this guy that you just feel great about if it's second and goal from the 7 or third and goal from the 4, but like you get that running back, and it changes everything. It changes how the defense does. So getting him back is absolutely huge in my eyes, and I think that's where games are won and lost is the teams that can turnovers number one, but it's like the teams that can actually like convert inside the 10 and get touchdowns instead of field goals. And again, it's just everything points to Texas, but the more you talk, I'm just like, this is going to be like, I'm going to be so wrong on this. So,
so maybe a live bet if you get either team above a possession, above a touchdown.
I've had bad luck with that. I respect people that do that, but anytime I've tried that, it's gone pear-shaped. And then you find yourself where you're like, oh, well, like now, like surely they'll cover the 9.5 and they'll cover 50. And like, I don't do that, but it's a good angle for people that do. So I respect that thought.
Just going back to the notion of you saying you think this could play out as the best game of the weekend. So tight game, therefore a one possession kind of game. That was my thought process.
No, of course. And I honestly, I'd probably do it. I'm just too many bad memories, like floating back, and a couple of them recent, because I actually did that in the first game too. I was just like, Texas is going to come back. They'll come back. And I don't think I won a single bet on that one, because I still thought that game was going to be a one possession game, and it didn't. So, but yeah. I hear you. I've said a lot of words. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be the best game of the week.
A little PTSD, I understand. Brett, so you're on Texas?
I think the TLDR is all the indicators point toward Texas, but Kirby Smart. if you need to sum it up in one sentence and underthink it, I think that's where I'm at.